Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at the Learning Technologies Autumn Forum 2025. My name's Liz Drury, and I'm chairing this afternoon's session, which is going to be with Bob Mosher from Apply Synergies. Bob's session is going to be quite interactive, so please do make use of the chat box and the questions. I'll be keeping an eye on that on Bob's behalf. And without any further ado, let's meet Bob.
Hey, Liz.
Afternoon. Good. Well, good morning to you, I think, Bob, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Charlotte, North Carolina. It is 8:30 a.m. So greetings, friends. Great to be over across the pond with all of you. Looking forward to the dialogue.
Well, thanks for being an early bird for us, Bob. Now, I know you've got a lot to get through, so I shall step into the shadows and I'll be keeping an eye on the questions for you, and we'll chat later.
Brilliant, Liz. Thanks so much. Friends, I'm looking to my right here because I have you on two monitors, but I'm going to be doing my slides here in a second. It's wonderful to be back. I so enjoy these events with Learning Technology and hope to be over there sometime soon for another one of your on-premise events. But really honored to be here today and excited about what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to bring my slides on the screen if I may. Friends, thank you so much. True workflow learning in the age of AI. Those of you that have heard me speak before know that this is a passion of mine, and I don't think there's a more exciting time to be in our industry. You know, obviously AI is all the buzz, in rightfully so in many wonderful ways. I'm sure you've heard plenty of speakers. I've seen the agenda ahead of me, so there's plenty of talk on this. I'm going to just be direct, friends. I think this is a pivot in our industry. I think this is a time for us to be positioned more strategically than ever. I think we can have an ROI and impact like we've never had before. And AI is going to be the catalyst for that. But what I think we also have to decide is, are we going to jump on the train or get run over? How's that? And a dear friend of mine said in L&D, it is the best of times or the worst of times. And I think it depends on how you're positioning yourself and how you see this remarkable tool working to support what we do. So excited about this dialogue about the true workflow learning in the age of AI. So let me get right into my slides. You know, just a little background, friends, with some data to kind of show where we're going. And by all means, please enjoy the back channel. I've heard it's pretty remarkable. I can't see it, but Liz will help. And please keep it going back there. I'd love to hear what you're thinking and how this is settling. But this wonderful guy, Josh Vershin, you may know him. He is a leading analyst in our industry, has been for years. Back in 2018, look at the bottom of the slide, friends, 2018, he told us that learning in the flow of work will be a major disruptor to traditional learning methods and would supplant many of the methods currently in use. And friends, I think this is what's going to happen, and the pivot will be AI. What Josh laid out is that there are these journeys in 2005, those of you old enough on this call to remember, and we followed different formats and learning curves, and a lot of it was driven by systems. See the bottom row, right? LMS, LCMS, all these other kinds of things that drove us from e-learning and blended in the early days of 1998 through to the digital learning age of VILT, micro-learning, all these remarkable things. Well, guess what, friends? We are now in the age of workflow learning. And guess what technology lives, breathes, and enables that? It's AI and something I'm going to call a digital coach. So, friends, the tools, the methodology, the time, the need is here. I've been waving this banner for almost 2 decades, to be honest, 20 years. But as I find in our industry, we need things to drive us there. And I think we know this as learners. It's not just the data. This has been the elephant in the room, as we say in the States, since as long as I've been at this. So do something for me, would you, in the chat? Would you look at this list of 9 things? And would you pick 2 numbers? And Liz is going to read them to me here in a bit as you put them in. What 2 methods have proven to be most effective for you in your learning journey to perform, remember, apply the most challenging? Notice it doesn't say learning issues of your life. It says performance issues of your life. So in the chat, and Liz, would you let me know, would you put 2 numbers in there that you, and says we're still on the previous slide in the audience slide. Okay, sorry, friends. Are you not on the voting slide? Let me know. It's there. Okay. So, and let me know, Liz, Frank, please, guys, about any delays. There you see the list. Pick 2 numbers. And Liz, let me know what you're saying. 4 and 6. Love that. That's the first vote we're getting. 6 and 9. Keep them coming. 4 and 5. 6 and 8. 6 is the most common number by far. 5 and 4. Yeah, you guys, those of you that heard me speak in the last 5 years, friends, you've seen me do this slide. I have done it for 5 years in front of thousands, I mean thousands of L&D professionals across the globe, literally across the globe, from every vertical, every socioeconomic, everything. And here's the thing, friends, these 3 always win. And I mean win by like 90%, always win. 90%. And if you look at the choices and the votes, 6 dominates, right? But here's the thing, these 3 never win, ever have ever won. Not one time. There is a vote here and there, but never have these 3 red things ever won for a performer to learn, remember, but then apply the most challenging performance. Well, guess what, friends? This is the business we're in. We are in the world of helping performers deal with challenges of performing in the workflow every single day. But here's my challenge about this 10, 20 years ago. I didn't know how to do the green stuff. I didn't know there was methodology to do the green stuff. I didn't know there was technology to do the green stuff. I was making red stuff, right? And here's the exciting thing, friends. All the people you support, everyone who pays your salary, everyone who wants you to be an L&D professional for them, everybody wants you to help them with this AI world that's coming down on them, wants you in the green world and still in the red. I want to be careful here, friends. You will always have the red stuff, but the green world is the workflow. And there are technologies, methodologies to help us move out there in a powerful way like never before. So, Liz, let me know if you're seeing the next slide. I know there was a delay. Okay, this is one of my favorite ones, friends, because here's the thing. I've been waving this banner, like I said, for at least a decade, if not 2. And I've been standing on the sideline with a wheel. And I don't mean me. Workflow learning has been standing on the sideline as a wheel. Look at those poor folks in the middle there, right? No thanks, we're too busy. And here's the thing, it's not that what I love about the cartoon is that it's not necessarily that the folks pulling the wagon or dragging that wagon are not listening. They've just been mired, fairly or unfairly, in the world of training and training deliverables, right? Well, guess what? The wheel of today is workflow learning and AI, and it is going to allow us, in fact, it's because of what it can do in training, we'll talk about that in a moment, it's going to make time for us to shift our focus away from those square wheels, which are still wheels, to these new round ones. But we have to have a strategy. We have to have a plan. We have to have a methodology. We are L&D professionals by trade. We don't do things in a chaotic way, hopefully. We do things based on methodology and supporting learning technologies to enable our deliverables, right? So, journey towards expertise. This is the business we are in, friends. And for too long, we have been mired in that green stuff. Are you seeing my next slide? I want to be sure that you're perfect, right? So here's what we do, you guys, and I get it. Because we were so busy, because the ask was always training, right? Getting people to mastery, all the technologies that are listed over here, and it's not an all-inclusive list. Since I've been in it, right? We took tools and applied them to training, and guess what? Here we go again. I've looked at a lot of AI, AR, VR, all this stuff. The majority that I have looked at are another mousetrap for training. Quicker, faster, video, agents, all that stuff. And guys, by the way, that's fine, and it should. And it's going to help us do what I'm going to challenge you to do next, because it's going to make the green stuff easier to do than ever. And then you are arguing, maybe in some cases, if I dare go there, do without us. So what's the world we need to be getting into? Well, you guys, it's this, right? Our measure is not by mastery. Our measure is by competency. I don't know if you've ever had someone come back to you and say, well, my people can't do anything, so the training was lousy. I would argue the training was spectacular, but training isn't competency. Training is mastery, right? And so if we're going to be into the sustain, transfer, and expertise business, guys, I can't think of another time in this is my 43rd year in L&D, 43 years. That's more than probably longer than some of you have been on the planet who are listening to this, right? In my 43 years, I don't know of a more chaotic and exciting time that organizations are anxious about competency and expertise. And I don't mean L&D. I mean those we serve. What is the role of a human in an AI world? What is the skills? There's that word. What are the skills gaps? How will AI augment, enhance skills, right? Friends, that's not green stuff. That is blue stuff, right? And so we have to get in this world of, as we all know, in fact, a lot of our stuff is forgotten because training is not a sustainable strategy alone. It is a wonderful mastery strategy. So friends, here's the thing, workflow learning. I've been showing this slide for a long time, you guys, but it has such a different flavor to it now because of the world we live in. And if you read AI stuff, not the L&D stuff, AI stuff, you hear the word workflows everywhere because we get it now. That's where it lives. Now, can it be used for training? Can it accelerate training? Can it accelerate the design and development of training? Absolutely. And by the way, we should do that. We have to do that. But friends, I would argue that that's not the world we're in. If I can get a little bold, it's kind of like moving the chairs around on the deck of the Titanic, right? It is the next really powerful design and development platform and training. But it's not, and never has been, only about training. We are in the performance business. We're in the productivity business, not the training business. So look what happens when you do workflow learning. I'll go back again to show you. Right. This is the traditional journey of training alone, even with all those cool tools. If we go into workflow learning, 3 remarkable things happen, friends, to the slide. Number 1, the training footprint on average is reduced by half, and AI is going to crush this. Crush it. Crush it, crush it, crush it. Right? Number 2, time to competency is increased by double. And there's data coming in to support all of this. There has been for a while, frankly. And more importantly, it is a sustainment strategy when workflow learning is built into your blend. Right? It's the teach the fish world, not feed a fish world. And AI is remarkable at this, and we can finally participate in and enable transfer and sustain like we've never been able to before with what digital coaches are becoming today and the methodology we have to do it. So, workflow learning, what is it? I'm a big vocabulary guy. If you know me well, you know I'm a big vocabulary guy. One of my beefs is something called microlearning. And the reason I have a beef with it, you guys, is because if you put 10 L&D professionals in 10 different rooms and ask them what microlearning is, you're going to get 9 different definitions. By the way, I'm not blasting microlearning at all. What I'm saying is we as an industry we pivot on methodology. We pivot on terminology. And if we want to be invited into this AI workflow learning digital coach world, we have to have a way in which to explain it so that those we serve understand what we can do and what they get. So to me, workflow learning is embedding learning and support in the workflow to be accessed while doing work. Workflow learning is not stepping out of the workflow to learn, if I may, like e-learning does. Even though you're in the workflow, you guys, and you call your LMS up and you call a course up, you are not in work anymore. You have stepped out of work to consume a learning product, which, by the way, is spectacular. It's quick, easy, JIT, if you remember that acronym, right? What I'm talking about here, though, is, and this is where AI is going to really spike this with digital coaches, is people will be working and want to learn while doing it. So that when they're done, they've made something, solved the problem, right? Gotten better at what they do. That is workflow learning, and it's done. Here's the deliverables, friends, all my IDs out there and learning folks, with a digital coach, of which AI we'll talk about in a moment is a huge part, as a complement to the targeted training that we will still do. We will still do, see the green? Targeted training, but will we do all the training we used to do? Nope. Should we ever have done all the training we used to do? Probably not. I think if we all sat in a room and talked and admitted, we'd say that we overtrain. I ask that question with every L&D team I work with and talk to around the world, and I always get head nods that we are asked to overtrain. I don't know if we do it on purpose. I think we would do less if we could, but because we're stuck in this training bucket, I want 5 days of leadership training. Everything's in the deep end. Every task, every skill is in the class. Not anymore. Shouldn't have been, doesn't have to be. Right? So let me just show you how this does work, because I want to, again, try to back up everything that I'm talking about today with data, research, and examples. So this is one example of an organization, a large consulting firm that was doing an onboarding classes. I don't know how many out there do onboarding, but look at this. It was 18 months. It was a very high risk, high engaging, important role. A lot of shadowing, a lot of coaching, right? A lot of on the job, that all that kind of stuff. And most people didn't stay longer than 18 months because who would? That's a long time to not do your job, right? And because they were spread out over countries, I don't know if you guys hear this out there, but they got this "we're all different" thing. So it all has to be different, which, by the way, is not necessarily true. So here was their goal. They wanted to reduce that by half, at least, because 18 months is too long. They wanted to get more quality and productivity out of the people that were training quicker, competency, and they wanted people to like their jobs. They wanted a more positive ecosystem. People didn't feel trusted or valued when it took 18 months. Well, look what happened, friends, when they implemented workflow learning. It went from 18 to 9 to 5 in 2 years. 5 compared to 18. But that's a time thing, and that's great. People were competent quicker, which is obviously a good thing. But look what also happened. Because of that, their knowledge retention improved. They were better at decision making, higher level thinking. They could handle a higher volume of work, and the oversight was reduced. But guys, what I like about the last 4 bullets over here, that's ROI, if you know Jack and Patty Phillips or Donald Kirkpatrick. The first one's nice math and nice economics, and 5 months is great to have people working. I get that. But the ROI is measured by the 4 bullets after. We have to be in this pool, or we're back here on the left, right? So look at this slide, guys. How does AI then impact all of this? Well, it's an accelerator, friends. It is going to be the pivot. It's whether we hop on the train or not, it is going to be the pivot, because when you start embedding AI as an augmenter to workflow and agential stuff in automation, look what happens to productivity, friends. Not even sustainment or competency, not even expertise. Those people who are competent or experts produce something, and organizations want more productivity out of their employees. But guess what, friends? And this is all cognitive research and such. We have a limited capacity for that. Even experts. We hit a ceiling, even though we grow and get better. I get that, but there is a human limitation to our productivity. Well, look what AI is going to do on top of that, or as a complement to that. So you see the light blue kind of plateauing, frankly, right? Or kind of blurry, going up and down. But look at the spike with the dark blue, right? So it's not just that it's going to help the person remain an expert or remain current. It'll do all those things, which it's kind of doing now. If you're the ChatGPT kind of stuff, right? It will actually help automate and add to productivity, so employees can do more with a AI assistant. alongside. That is incredibly exciting. But to do it, friends, you got to be here. I'm going to keep pounding this drum. You need to be here in your design and your development. Can you see how the green stuff is left behind? Not that it's not still in the mix, the blend, but it will be reduced and minimized. It already is. Now, that doesn't mean it's not important, right? But I adamantly believe it will not be the tip of the sword in a year, 2, 3, oh my gosh, 3, 5 years, right? So we've got to play out here. And how do we do that? Well, you guys have seen this before, probably, those of you that heard me speak. 5 moments of need. We have to stop just designing for these two. And we have to get out and start understanding these in our design, in our performance consulting. How's that for a new role, right? Our strategic consulting, workflow learning, digital coach augmented with AI, and apply is where it has always been, friends. It's always been. But until tools like digital coaches, which by the way have been around for a decade, honestly, remember the square hole, square wheel, round wheel? You know, guys, they've been around. It's been around for a decade. But we're busy. AI is going to be the accelerator here. And finally, we can design for apply first, the workflow, and augment, enhance with training as a byproduct of our design. That's a significant flip, folks. I hope you heard it, right? Because until I got into this methodology, training was first. I built training first. And then if I had time, I made job aids, frankly, right? No. You're going to start designing for apply first, for the workflow first, and then have a better view of a much more effective targeted training deliverable to enhance that. So methodology, one slide. There's a whole lot more in this. And if you want more, I'll show you at the end how you can get it. But what I want you to feel comfortable with out there, friends, is it is a methodological shift. Did I say that word right? And there is a methodology called enable, like ADDIE. If you know ADDIE, I don't know how many of you out there know ADDIE, right? ADDIE builds training brilliantly. Enable, with the work of Dr. Conrad Gottfredson, it's been 50 years of his work, 50 years, friends, not just AI recent or even workflow learning recent. Con has been at this for 50 years. The enable methodology is an enhancement to ADDIE. It is the next ADDIE if you want to get into this. And what you see on the screen are some fundamental parts. There's way more to it than this, honestly. But I really wanted you to see some that should resonate with you relative to this discussion and where AI is going and digital coaches are going. And look at the very first analysis. Rapid workflow analysis. We have to know what the workflow is, not the things that SMEs think are important to be taught. I hope you heard that, right? It is not a SMEs in a room telling us what leaders do. It's not SMEs in a room telling us what, how the CRM is going to help us with sales. No. You put people in a room and based on the scope, based on the performance, you figure out and do what's called rapid workflow analysis. It is a methodology practice. Then critical skills, you see the other ones on the screen. For this presentation, I'm obviously pivoting on the top one because that's where we need to intentionally go and understand how to. So you guys may know a gentleman named Donald Clark. Donald, I would argue among many, Donald Clark may be one of the premier thinkers in AI and learning. He's kind of in your backyard there overseas, but brilliant man, right? I would highly recommend you follow, read his stuff. And there's others too, friends, that are in the pool, right? But this is a guy that has lived it and understands it in ways that I think are just remarkable. And he's also a good research guy. That's what I like about Donald. Not only is he practical and pragmatic, he reads the research. He watches the technology and the studies. And look at this one that's come out recently, right? It shows the skills that AI is helping people do. Look at some of the ones that they look. Critical thinking, folks. That's a soft skill, right? Active listening, reading comprehension, writing, right? These are the tools of any performer, I would argue, in the workplace, right? And then you go down the list. But the reality is, what Donald's very clear about with this slide is that LLMs focus on text, tasks, skills. Here's the thing, friends. That's terrific. But the reality is, real work happens in a workflow, which focuses on applying the processes, the tasks, the steps, equipment, context, all these things. And that's what's missing here, friends. Skills alone don't make me a better performer. Skills applied to my work make me a better performer. My work is the workflow. And if I don't have a view of the workflow, if someone hasn't architected that for me, if someone hasn't helped AI understand the relevance of that, the context of that, boy, I'm going to be awful careful here. It's a really sophisticated Google, right? People are going to it for help, but encapsulated in a skill, not seeing and understanding the workflow, things before, things after. Workflows, you guys, are made up of tasks. Workflows are made up of tasks. That slide before was individual skills and tasks with no context, Our job is to give those tasks workflow context, and that is the bridge to productivity, right? And guess what? Agents, AI is going to be in there, in the mix. That's exciting, right? But it needs our help as designers and developers to help the organization see the context. I was with a company just recently out in California talking to some of their senior leaders, not L&D, and they said, we're really concerned about what is going to be the new skills gap of the next 3 to 5 years. And they said, what we mean by that is we don't know the skills that people need yet. And we don't know the skills that AI is going to do that they don't have to do. Well, friends, that's a leader asking for context. That's a leader asking for what is the work being done so I can look at it through that lens and then understand where these agents fit in. And if they do fit in, where my employer, where my performer uses them, doesn't use them, shouldn't use them. You don't know the answer to that, friends, until you know the workflow. And that is our new domain. That is the new world we're being pulled into. So, digital coach, let's talk about tools because we build stuff. I'm not going to talk a lot about training, friends, in this, although training's impacted. I'm going to stay away from training. I'm going to stay away from AI and training. There's plenty of noise on that, but there's not a lot of noise in here. And look at the date on this slide, you guys, 1991. 1991. I don't know if some of you were born in 1991. But what always aggravates me about these slides, you guys, is this isn't new. This is the round wheel that has been sitting on the sideline since 1991. Over 30 years. Over 30 years. This wonderful woman, Gloria Geary, threw out this definition. Does that sound familiar at all in the world we live in today? Like maybe AI? Like maybe digital coaches and performance support? This woman had this vision and could build it in 1991. This is our calling card, and these are the guardrails, right? Can critical thinking skills be developed through using AI in order to critique AI? As AI is only as good as its input, is there still space for external skills developed in critical? Yeah, I think, Rachel, the reality is critical skills are demonstrated through application, not understanding, right? Critical thinking is not something that I should know. It's something that I apply. And AI will help us apply and evaluate our critical thinking, right? But there's absolutely space. I think what you're asking there is there space for context, right? And that's where we're going, you guys. We are in the context world We're in the apply, solve, and change world with the skills we have and stuff like on the screen. How do you ensure tracking skill development if the learning is happening in the workflow? This is what's exciting about it, you guys. If you know the workflow, you track it by how work's going, right? We got to get out of this mind of tracking learning. Like, did they take it? Did they complete it? Are they certified? Are they compliant? Not that those are important in the mastery world, but here's the exciting thing, Eileen, is that when you know the workflow and that workflow and tracking the application effectiveness of these skills is how well the work's being done. Are they meeting KPIs? Are they not performing? Are there skills gaps that we can understand now because we know the work? It's a way easier to evaluate than the old days that we looked at it and the lenses we used to look at it through. So do this with me, will you, friends? Would you in chat read that definition and give me some words that are really powerful for you as a learning professional that Gloria describes here? Would you put them in chat? And Liz, would you let me know what you're seeing? What words jump out at you as really powerful in what's going on? I know there's a bit of a delay on getting your answers in there, but read the paragraph. What jumps out at you as powerful? I'm gonna sip my coffee, if you don't mind. Orchestrated, love that. Integrated. Guidance. Keep them coming. High-level job performance. Yeah, that's productivity. Assistance. Yeah, you guys, this is brilliant, right? And honestly, look at that. 1991. We throw the word thought leader out a lot in our industry. This woman was a thought leader, because I would argue, if we look at the average L&D portfolio, I don't know if it's doing this yet. In 1991, I don't know if in our offerings we're doing this yet. Context sensitive, embedded. Again, friends, sound familiar? This is a woman who saw AI before the acronym ever existed. But again, to Gloria, it wasn't a technology, it was a deliverable, right? On demand. On demand's been hard for us to do forever, because for us, on demand often meant e-learning being on demand. That's not what this paragraph is challenging us to do. This paragraph is challenging us to make assistance, training, these assets available while people are working. Love that. So, are you seeing my slide yet? These are the words that always win. And look at the ones you picked in the chat, right? Orchestrated, on demand, integrated, high level job performance, right? These are ones that, as an instructional designer, should excite you, especially the word orchestrated. Because orchestrated, friends, means designed, structured, read this, you guys. Imagine this. If you take the word orchestrated out of that paragraph, it is a dramatically different paragraph. Because a set of services that, okay, move, the gloves are off. Orchestrated is a very powerful word, and one that means design. And Gloria was very intentional about those words. So let's talk about the design of learning in the workflow. You guys know the design of learning, right? You guys know the design of training, right? I don't know if you've ever heard this or written this down in your lifetime, but in this lesson, you will learn. Has anyone ever written that in your life or read it in your life? Right? That is an objective, learning, hopefully performance objective, that we write when we have to teach. It is the tip of the sword of instruction, right? It's the WIFM, if you know what the WIFM, what's in it for me means, right? Well, here's the thing, friends. When people are in the workflow, they do not need a WIFM because they are in the workflow. When you leave the workflow to learn, I need context. I need metaphors, examples, analogies. In this lesson, I need to be told, in this lesson, you will learn, and here's why you should care. When I'm working, I don't need why I should care. I'm facing change, solve, or apply. And I've got the context. So the architecture, and again, this I hope is exciting because like the architecture of making e-learning, there's an architecture of making digital coaches, including with AI. So what happens is it is a hierarchical design from minimal to more. Because when I'm in the workflow, I want to get back to work. I want to get help. I want to learn as soon as possible and as quickly as possible. So the architecture of content is structured as so. At the very top, it's very finite. It's very focused. It doesn't have a lot of breadth because I don't want breadth if I don't need it. But as you work down that paragraph, friends, you see how the pyramid implies breadth and support. That's why we use the metaphor. I know pyramids are used a lot, but I love this one. People resources at the bottom is a heavy, wide, broad, expensive, hard to keep current, not always available resource. But if I have the tasks at the top in my digital coach and AI, I just work. I get back to work. But what the pyramid recognizes is that people need more than that. Have you ever Googled something or chat GBT'd something and gone, this isn't enough. I don't even know what this means. And then off you wander trying to prompt appropriately to get that this architecture gives you that structure and journey in an effective, efficient, quick way. Use generative coach bots feels more ad hoc and chaotic. How do we want it? How do we want make them more orchestrated? Well, Stephen, I hope the screen on the screen's showing you that. Many bots are absent of this architecture. It's a design architecture. And a digital coach is much broader than that. And it's much more than just a AI bot. Although you'll see in a moment that is a powerful front end to these things. So, role of AI in workflow learning design. So I'm gonna go for the low-hanging fruit here, friends, and that is that we talked about the bot parts, Stephen and others, right? Disconnected might be better than chaotic, he says, right? I don't know if I know what that means. Disconnected may be better than chaotic, than chaotics. Give me a little more on that, Stephen, if you don't mind. But so here's the reality. You are all hopefully trying to do this or are going to try to do this. And there are AI technologies like there are in training that help us do the design quickly, effectively, and get these things out the door. Better word. Disconnected. I agree. Right. Yeah. It's guys, if you remember the early days of Google, you asked what you thought was a simple question and got a lot of answers. And then you had to get better at it, and the logarithms got better and the whole deal. But at the same time, was it the most efficient? Was it always correct? Did it know my context in which I was asking the question? The answer to a lot of those is, of course not, right? So this is where we're going with this. So let me show you how AI tools. Now I'm going to introduce you to one of organization that's making these. There are people that understand workflow learning, friends, vendors, suppliers, like we have on the learning side, training side. You guys may know Adobe. You ever heard of Adobe? Right? And these tools that help us make LMSs, all these things, you guys, they help us on the training side. Well, there are vendors, suppliers that have been in the workflow learning space for, frankly, years. And here's one coming from an organization called Ask Delphi, and they have this thing called a designer AI. It reduces the workload of the subject matter experts. That sound helpful or familiar? One of the biggest obstacles to any deliverable, workflow or training are access to content. And a lot of the content is in the heads of or on the desktop of our SMEs, our subject matter experts. We've got to reduce that burden. Secondly, the quality has to get better. And I think that's being recommended here, right? Accelerate the projection time to get the stuff out. Increase scalability, right? We got to make a lot of these. The workflow's complex. The roles out there are changing all the time. We have to be able to scale and keep this stuff current in a really quick way. Enhance, this is the sweet spot for us, the relevance, applicability, and autonomy of the learning department. We need to be seen differently, friends. We can't be the training department anymore or the order takers. Ever heard that order taker thing? It drives me crazy, right? The fact that people come into your office and go, I want 5 days of training, is such an unfair ask of what L&D can do, right? We need, and if we're going to survive this pivot, we have to be relevant. We have to be in the world of application. We have to become autonomous from a deliverable alone and be seen as more powerful. So let me show you the journey of this on this side. So we have all this source content, right? That our SMEs have, learning content we've made, e-learning that we've designed, that can be fed into a database that a AI tool using the 5 moments methodology, the structure you saw earlier, the pyramid, new, more, solve, and apply, lays that lens over it and dissects and extracts these principles, these deliverables, these learning content types, these structures. AI loves structure. A lot of the stuff in the source side of that, friends, something we're discovering is that we have a lot of really unstructured data, super poorly structured data. AI is doing its best and getting better at it, but we need it to be much more structured, Stephen, if we're going to step into that world of letting learners learn while doing. We're going to ask a lot of the structure of the content they get, and it not to be chaotic, haphazard, old, out of date, long, right? We need these content structures at the bottom. And then what we'll do is we step in. A lot of the heavy lifting is done. And between the business matter expert, maybe it's a new acronym for you, BME, SME, you probably know that one, and us, we have this validation orchestration role. What I love about what I'm seeing in AI, both in workflow learning and training design, is that there's so much of the old days of data collecting and writing and authoring and, oh my gosh, that this thing will do and free us to do the important design stuff. How could you use AI into workflow and teams who've been stirring strong views about AI and believe it to be a destructive force? Yeah. Jenny, where do I start with that one, right? We don't get into this in this presentation, but there are concerns. We've heard them from experts, right? And I get that. We had concerns about the internet when it came out. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that, but the whole world blew up when the internet came out. Oh my gosh, people can get the information. What about my IP? What about security? This is not a new problem, right? But it won us over because we stepped back from the hype and we made practical things with it. We showed how we could do pragmatic, simple, maybe at first, things. And then we understood how we wanted or should get more. Every person I've guided through workflow learning, every organization I work with, it is a crawl, walk, run. It is an evolutionary journey, not a revolutionary one, although many would argue AI is revolutionary. But let me share another quote with you. My mother was a lifelong educator, and she told me years ago when e-learning first came along, and it was, hey guys, remember, it was struggling in the early days. And she said this, she goes, although there will be revolutionary technologies and methodologies, in learning. They will only ever be adopted in an evolutionary way. Say it again. Although there will be revolutionary technologies and methodologies, and clearly workflow learning, AI is one, they'll only ever be adopted in an evolutionary way because, Jenny, what you're talking to is there's the human factor here that is a barrier, is an obstacle. Fear, change, people don't like it. So what a wonderful role for us to play. Now that we have these constructs and we have these technologies that can build really cool things. There's the chatbot, you guys. It will be a part of the UI, but the pyramid, the digital coach, is also going to be in there. And again, I wish I could show you more of them in this presentation, but digital coaches have been around a long time, over a decade. They still have their role. But what I love is the marriage between these two. The task handoff is so powerful. Look at this journey, friends. This is not chaotic. This isn't vaporware or something that I or others have dreamed up. This is happening right now. So let me just show you some results and then we'll Q&A. Here is the development without AI in the workflow learning, not training. Here's development with AI. You guys have probably heard of a project kickoff. Sure. Same thing, but notice over here, we also start collecting documents. Session 1. Anyone know task analysis? Ever heard those words, right? It's not task analysis in workflow analysis. It's workflow analysis. And over here, look what's happening. You saw the tool a moment ago. That is being generated and automated now. This was a huge lift. 4 sessions, a huge lift. And there was work between the sessions, by the way. Huge lift. This is the design, create, make stuff. Analyze resources, determine knowledge, all that kind of stuff. 1 session. Validation sessions, much smaller, typically around a 1 session equivalent. And then look what happens next. This is the lift, you guys. This is the lift that has mired us with SMEs and our IDs. Make stuff, create stuff, determine a plan. Well, guess what? Not applied here. The tool does it for you. It's a deliverable that you validate. Want to see some powerful numbers? The old days, 3 months. In workflow learning design. In workflow learning design, 3 months. Sounds kind of familiar probably in e-learning design. Look over here, 1 month. 1/3 shorter. 2/3 shorter, sorry. 1/3 of the time. Want to do ROI on just that? So, SMEs, 60% time saved. Imagine how much faster, better your content would be if you could reduce SME time by 60%. And then the learning professional, 50%. Right? But more importantly, accelerates projects by up to 50. And this is the winner here, friends. This is the bell that rings today. Better quality, more consistent analysis, better documentation, better processes, better input, better use of our content experts. It removes a lot of the ambiguity and makes it quicker. Okay. We've got 10 minutes left. That was a lot. So here's what I'd love to do. Liz, is Q&A for what's left if you've got them. I will show you on the slide how you can learn more about me or this or go deeper. There's my email. And I think they're going to provide links, if I remember, for this after or maybe even during. But there's an ebook in 5 moments with a chat with a bot. How's that, right? There is videos, podcasts, more stuff than you'll ever want. And there's a designer course in the UK in November and February. If you want to go deeper than the 1 slide I covered on the methodology. But friends, thousands are doing this. Thousands across the world. We're millions. L&D's probably millions. A lot. But this is not new, friends. This is not a one-hit wonder. This is not something that I thought up or was thought up because of AI. And like any learning tool, it should be an accelerator and an enabler of what we do better if we allow it to be. So questions, comments, it doesn't have to be questions, comments, reactions would be wonderful.
Thank you, Bob. This has been a fantastic session. There's loads of comments, and I'm not going to be able to read everybody's out, but I'm going to scroll back up to the start. There was one quite interesting one around micro learning, which you talked about quite early on. And that was from Rachel, and she says, I worry that, oh, don't jump about on me, please. I worry that micro-learning is often misused and exacerbates the issue of time, attention, and engagement, and can make the learning seem less important because it's short and small.
I totally agree. You know, micro learning, because we're talking smaller chunks, you guys, if you're familiar with cognitive load and chunking principles, often when we break large learning objects into smaller ones, they lose context. And context is what encoding, right? If you guys know brain science and encoding, right? That's what helps with transfer. And that's what scares me about that slide that I showed you earlier with all the lines for critical thinking and all this kinds of stuff. That's taking small bites of skills or a task, one task. And again, that's okay, friends, but for application and long-term productivity, it needs to be wrapped in context, right? And so looking something up doesn't mean I can do it. And I totally agree, friends. That's why I love microlearning mixed into this workflow learning stuff, the pyramid I showed you earlier, because it gives it remarkable context and makes those smaller bites of interventions more powerful.
So we've got a question here from Eileen, and she says, I know that one of the fears within my team is that as we introduce AI, we'll need fewer staff members. You mentioned briefly about new job titles, but how would you prepare traditional L&D teams to transition to the new model of working?
Yeah, that's a great question, you guys, and I get the fear, and I don't think we would be honest with ourselves if there's not going to be some shuffling here and some changing of roles, maybe some elimination of roles. But friends, let's take a step back. When does that not happen? When a new technology comes along. I mean, but you know, it's the dinosaur or alligator thing, right? The dinosaur didn't survive because it didn't adapt. The alligator's still around, by the way, which was a prehistoric animal. So my question, friends, is, and that's one of the pitch I tried to make in my presentation, although I know it was short, was there is a door opening for us to adapt. Performance consulting, workflow analysis, measurement, KPI, AI design, digital coaches, all these things are the new domains. I was with a group last week that has renamed their IDs performance architects. I don't think that's a brand change. That's a deliverable change. And guess what? The performance architects are being allowed to have a different discussion with the business than IDs did. So we have to adapt. Performance consulting, you got to look it up. Data analysis, got to look it up. Obviously, fluency and literacy in AI, got to be tip of the sword. But we had the same shift back when e-learning came, and we left Word to write courseware into Adobe to write e-learning, right? So, and new role, and by the way, new roles emerged.
We've got a comment here from Catherine. She says, we're taking people out of the equation on the input side and shifting the accountability and responsibility elsewhere. That's the pivot point for me, and where organizations are struggling with what this means with the traditional structures.
Yeah, it's brilliant, right? But I think we have to be careful here, you guys, if I may. I have gray hair for a reason. I'm the elder statesman. I'm probably on this call, right? I'm 65 years old, right? This is my 43rd year in this, and here's my experience with everything. we go a little too far on what we think the technology can and will do. And I'm not saying this won't be remarkable. I'm not saying that. But I think, you know, here's what we're finding when we do document analysis, you guys, and take the human element, if you will, or the SME out of it, or that kind of stuff. There is a lot in SME's heads that's not documented. Tons in SME's heads that's not documented. Or if it's documented, it's documented poorly. Right. So I don't see AI sucking that out anyway right now, or maybe for the foreseeable future. Right. So our ability to step in that level of analysis, content curation, user generated content. We've been using these words for a while. This is a brave new world for us. And back to the question a moment ago, these are emerging roles that we have to get better at, and organizations need so badly, because that question wasn't about L&D, it was about the impact on the organization that this technology is having. And back to my point earlier, people don't know what the next role will be of their salespeople because of this. Well, we can help with that. We can step in to understand the workflow, the tasks, the skills, and as AI augments, replaces, does better, automates, we can help with that journey. And by the way, a sales rep can sell a whole lot more if they're not working on their CRM all day.
There's a lovely quote in here this is from Alan. He says, PowerPoint never replaced me when it killed overhead projectors.
Yeah, guys, quick story. I remember trying to introduce, this shows you how old I am, you guys. I remember trying to introduce PowerPoint to my trainers and had them not use their transparencies. They almost flipped. They literally almost revolted on me. Right. And I think I love the quote, friend, because I think there's a lesson for that today. Right. We didn't let it replace us because we realized that was a tool in our toolbox. It didn't define what we did and who we were. So we have to get out of the training business and into the performance business. And there's a significant need for that right now.
Yeah. I know we've seen the comment that Andrew's just put into our chat box, Bob. I wonder how much perception is a factor here. Do learners typically attach more weight to system-generated performance support than chatting with a colleague?
That's going to take some time, you guys, because there's a trust factor, and and the word hallucination scares people. I think, when it came out and so on. I think a lot of that is myth, honestly, and I think the AI is getting better at it than we think it will. But I think it's a hype curve. You guys have seen the hype curve before, right? And the dust will settle, and the human side is going to be interesting to watch. There's a lot. It's my daughter is a mental health counselor, and there's a lot of remarkable AI stuff in that domain. But a lot of patients, she still has a full course load, unfortunately. Right? Because Bill or Mary or Liz down the hall, who's the expert, and has real life experience and is in the field with me, although agents and stuff will be as well. We have to keep our eye on that blend. And I absolutely believe the pendulum will swing back all the way. No, it never does. But a balance will be struck.
That question was from Stephen, by the way. Andrew had fished that out of the chat for us. So another comment here from Vivi. She says, the access to support is key, if you ask me. I don't care if it's a bot, a person, or a call tip, as far as it's there in the moment of my need.
Yeah, you guys. I mean, have you ever walked through the halls and seen Post-it notes all over people's monitors? I mean, this is not new. But here's the problem. Those Post-it notes are two problems with them. Three problems. Number one, they're chaotic. They have no context. They're all over the place. Number two, they're probably old and not right. So currency is an issue. And secondly, they're on one monitor. And your company has 1,000 employees. So what if we could finally scale that? What if we could finally give orchestration to that? What if we could give currency to that? You guys, the productivity gain is astronomical, but that's design. I'm going to keep pounding this, right? That's workflow learning design, and something we can do right? Because you're right, friend. People just want the job done. I had a manager tell me the other day, if I could skip you people, I would. No offense to you, but I don't want my people trained. I want them working.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can have them working faster, I would skip you. But the inference was, I'm not. I get it. There are things that are still and should be trained. But this new blend and stuff is going to be so powerful.
Okay, well, we're going to have to leave that there. That's the end of this session. But please, everyone, do come back and join us. Ignore my phone at 3:30 for our next session. That's with David Kelly. And his talk is called Adapting to Disruption, Rethinking Learning Tech in the Age of AI. So
there you go.
More on the AI.
More on the AI. Good. Thanks,
Thank
friends.
you
Appreciate
so much,
you.
Rob. That's been a fantastic session. And thanks, everyone, for all your questions and participation.
Take care, friends. Bye.